So a good thing to do, and I usually say this at the beginning, is if you have questions, ask them when we're all stopped here, because a lot of people will want to hear. It usually means I missed something or I didn't explain something well. So do that, and then I'll say it to everyone at the same time. So your question was, what was happening where people stopped using the upstairs? There were two things really at play. One is government had sort of just invented city zoning and planning, and the people that were in charge of it tended to be control freaks, and they didn't like the messiness of cities. So to sort of sanitize cities, one thing they like to do is say a building could only be one type of use. So they didn't like having a shop on the bottom and an office or apartment upstairs. So they turned it to single-use zoning, which meant that a lot of the businesses just covered up the upstairs and just used the bottom. The other thing that was happening was sort of more of the mindset of the time was that the upstairs area tended to have brick and old windows and, you know, what we would consider craftsmanship now. In those days, they considered out-of-date, old-fashioned nonsense. I've been listening to Kurt Vonnegut, so I'm starting to sound like him. So it was a period of time where we wanted to be modern and streamlined and efficient and not put up with all that extra designy stuff up on that building there. That was frivolous, right? We're serious. We're going to put a man on the moon. No more of this nonsense. And that was 60s, 50s through early 70s maybe.
Didn't they also make it expensive or something through, wasn't there a financial disincentive or something? There
were lots of it. Most of it had to do with sort of the new zoning rules. So even in some places, like you all know the old Cosmo, in the 50s they decided that there couldn't be any upstairs hotels or apartments. And so they actually had building owners take off their top floor in that case. There used to be another floor up above.
Like here, didn't they take off the top floor?
Yep, they took off top floors here as well. This is a really beautiful building. The current owners didn't do it. Don't be mad at them. But so that was sort of, and that was happening around the country. You know, it was just this, I don't know, really strange point in time where we didn't appreciate our heritage, we didn't appreciate craftsmanship, we didn't appreciate the way things had always worked. We were like smarter, better, gonna do everything in a new way, which means every old way was suddenly bad. And yeah, so it's sort of like, I think of it as opposite day. If it used to be ornate and beautiful, then the new way had to be sleek and streamlined and featureless, right? And so you can kind of see, you know, you can look at food, you know, TV dinner, right? Well, Grandma used to make this really incredible dinner with stuff she got from her garden and threw in the spices, and it was the way her grandmother did it. Well, that's not good enough anymore. Now it has to come out of aluminum and, you know, whatever. So it was sort of a societal shift, and so downtowns really reflect those kinds of social norms as you look through it and see, you know, what kinds of buildings were built or renovated for different eras. So, you know, I think hopefully we've gone back to the point where we do have an appreciation of what came before us, and that we do have an appreciation when we build something new to have the classical elements that work with maybe a modern touch for what we understand now, like making it LEED certified is a new cool thing, right? So it's more energy efficient. But that doesn't mean you have to give up good design. You can have both, right? You can have eyes on the street in a new building or an old building. So you can really start making, I think, smarter decisions about what you do with your built environment.
So that change in aesthetic led, like in this case, to them removing the entire second floor?
Well, it was the aesthetic and also just the belief that you didn't want to have multiple uses in multiple buildings. So, like the people in charge could not imagine why in the world anyone would want to live on a second floor in a downtown. Like, why would you do that? It's noisy and it's dirty and there's all kinds of people around. Why wouldn't you want to go live in a quiet suburban tract house and have peace and quiet and not have all this chaos around you?
Let's drive all the people out of downtown.
Right, and they did that all over, right? So we tend to think when we look at a product on TV and go, that's stupid, who would ever buy it? And then you find out 10 million people bought it. Like, they're not all stupid, you just weren't the market for that product, right? Like the little thing that bumps your hair up, you know? I'm probably not the target audience for that. What, bumpies or something? Bumpits, right? I'm not the target audience, but it doesn't mean it's stupid because a lot of people bought them, right? So, or it is stupid, okay. Maybe bad example. But, so the guys that wanted, and they were all guys, this is a very patriarchal time in our history, they all wanted those suburban house lifestyle, which good for them. What they didn't understand is there are a whole bunch of us that like an urban lifestyle too, and they really made the urban lifestyle illegal for decades, right? So you couldn't have downtown housing up here and commercial down there. So just with the recent downtown plan, really the cleanest law change that happened is now by right you can put multiple buildings in. You don't need an exception or a variance or whatever. Since maybe the last 15 years you could legally get around it and put in mixed uses, but it was more costly and you had to fight more bureaucracy to do it. But the new downtown plans say, by right, put whatever you want in here, except on Fulton, the ground floor retail is required. By right, you can put tables and chairs out in front. By right, they can put a rooftop bar up there. That'd be good, yeah.
So when,
thought you might like that.
When's Tom going to do that?
That's a good question.
Oh. So what is going on with this building?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Not a god. Yeah.
Nothing.
No, nothing is going on.
If Ashing can
well, yeah, that's an interesting link between these that I won't get to today. But yeah, we've got to speed things up now. So the faster revitalization happens, the faster these buildings will get fixed up. Right? So the more of you that are down here eating and drinking and shopping and bringing your friends with you, the more activity, the more someone's going to want to rent that space and it'll get fixed up.
So what are they waiting for this?
So I'm going to be very general and generous in my comments. So what are they waiting for here? They're waiting for the market to be different than it is. So the way this works is developers, say a developer is going to go to a bank and the bank is going to lend them money to do a project, right? So the bank is going to want to see how much rent you're going to get for the project. And if you look at downtown and do a rent survey and find that it's 75 cents a square foot, that is not going to pay the rent payment or the mortgage payment on the loan that you'd need to fix up this building. So let's say this building cost $15 million to fix up, right? 75 cents a square foot is not going to make that money to pay the $15 million loan back. So in a downtown, you need rents to go up enough to pay for the cost of fixing up this building. And our rents have been too low, even though my bleeding heart friends that I love they don't ever think rent should ever go up. There is a case that rents could be too low. There is a case that rents could be too high, but we're on the too low scale. So we need rents to be whatever that rate is the banks want, $1.50 a foot, $2 a foot, whatever that is, to be able to make the payment to get the loan to fix up that building. So short economics. The rent on this building, the ground floor is going to about $2, and upstairs it's probably $1.25-ish. So they're getting up there, but 3 years ago it was basically 50 cents a square foot for ground floor retail. And I know you probably don't have scale for that, so it doesn't mean anything. I think probably in any decent sized city in California, $2 a foot for ground floor retail would be the minimum. And then you'd get up to like downtown Palo Alto or something, or Pasadena, where it could be $10 a foot, right? So 50 cents a foot is just so low that you can't even afford to maintain a building.
What is that from?
But rent reflects
I'm sorry, you continue.
through
Sorry.
there?
Yeah.
Our baseball stadium. So it's our AAA baseball stadium. So rents are a direct reflection of how many people there are down here supporting downtown, right? So if rents are 50 cents a foot, then that means our downtown economy is very broken. There aren't enough people down here buying stuff and doing stuff to get those rents to go up. So if 10% more people come down here after the street opens, then there will be 10% more commerce, which means the businesses can afford a 10% increase in their rent, which means building values go up 10%. Now that's not exactly true, but generally is true. Kind of gives you an idea of how it works. So we need a certain amount to go up to be able to get all of this to work.
Will office rent go down? Because right now, office space down here is more expensive than anywhere else in the city.
Yeah, office space is a little bit more expensive.
It's cheaper to go into a new building in River Park than to get an office.
Yeah, and I think, so those things kind of equal out a little bit. So when things are really low on Shaw Avenue, then people will sort of start moving there.
Right.
The one thing that happens with a healthy downtown, though, is it starts creating its own economy, because if it's the busy happening place and you're a retailer, you can't really afford to be anywhere away from it. So that's why they tend to go up higher than the office or residential.
Yeah, because then you have more office space, because right now it's quite expensive because there just isn't that much.
Right.
So Craig, what is Savant getting for his loss up there?
He's getting about $1.50, $1.70 a square foot. Yeah, so that would be $1.60 a square foot. The highest rent I know of for residential is at Fulton and Divisadero, and it's $2 a foot. So they're not all of the Granvilles are that high per square foot, but one of them is, and that is, I think, the highest rent per square foot in our region that I know of. Beats anything out north. All right, let's walk.